headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. Today we begin in Venezuela, where the Bolivarian Peoples Congress is taking place in the city of Caracas. The international event brings together municipal councilors, social movements, governors, executive cabinet members, and representatives of the Latin American left. Speaking at the Congress, President Nicolás Maduro touched on economic recovery and national defense.
Es verdad que hay una guerra económica.
It's true that there is an economic war that we must defeat with recuperation, prosperity, and a growth program. It's true, and we are working towards that every day.
The government of Venezuela has announced the expulsion of Juan Carlos Pérez Villamizar, a non-accredited Colombian consular officer. Venezuela's government has said that he was functioning in the country without proper accreditation, in open violation of international convention. This follows what the government has referred to as the arbitrary expulsion by Colombian authorities of Venezuelan citizen Carlos Pino. Pino was an official of the Venezuelan embassy in Bogotá and was, quote, kidnapped by Colombian authorities and arbitrarily expulsed. The Venezuelan people have once again rejected the aggressive U.S. policies which aim to harm Venezuela's peace and economic stability.
U.S. pressure on Venezuela has intensified over the last couple of months. Economic strangulation, magnicide, and destruction are all part of U.S. plans that want to diminish peace.
How can they mess with Venezuela? Venezuela is a country which is not colonialist. It's a country which isn't expansionist. It's a country that is respectful, a country of peace, and a socialist country.
Those are the words of the people who are against the interventionist attitudes of U.S. President Donald Trump in his attempt to distort the production of food, medicine, and basic goods for the people of Venezuela.
We are celebrating Christmas, and they want to take that away from us with the sanctions and the economic and financial blockade, also the social and political blockade. That's what they want. They don't want Nicolás Maduro to swear in on January 10th.
Analysts warn of a new military aggression against Venezuela.
The
United States takes advantage of its hegemonic position and threatens other countries. A little over 80% of its commercial transactions are done with U.S. dollars. The dollar has turned into a tool of dominance, of pressure on other countries, and therefore threatens any country that can have some type of relationship with Venezuela.
The National Constituent Assembly of Venezuela is in favor of approving an accord that ratifies dialogue to consolidate the future of Venezuela, respecting the laws, the Constitution, as well as democracy.
In Chile, a video has emerged showing the last few seconds of Camilo Catrillanca's life before he was assassinated. Lawyer representing the Mapuche community, Patricio Sepúlveda, handed over the video evidence to the prosecutor in Temuco. The video also shows a policeman patrolling Coyipuyi Road while a helicopter hovers above. The footage contradicts the statement made by the head of the police, who said evidence of police presence in the area that day had been destroyed. Our correspondent Diario Valenzuela from Santiago has more details on this story.
Police are now attempting to shoot down claims that fellow officers' body cameras recorded graphic footage that could implicate police in the murder of Camilo Catrillanca. The young Mapuche leader was gunned down on November 14th, allegedly by members of the Special Police Unit. Fresh evidence in the form of several videos was released by a media outlet earlier on Thursday. In fact, one of the videos shows the exact moment Catrillanca was fatally shot. The footage was believed to have been captured by body cameras worn by officers allegedly involved in Catrillanca's murder. The video sparked widespread outrage on social media, triggering renewed calls from the Chilean public and Mapuche community for the head of Public Security Minister Andres Chadwick and Police Chief Hermes Soto. The government has also reportedly asked the police chief to resign. The Piñera administration is expected to make a decision on the case sometime later today.
We thank Diare for that report. And port workers in Chile are continuing their strike despite recent police repression. They are demanding their work be respected and reject the symbolic reparations proposed by the government.
Port workers have unanimously described the government's pre-agreement as a mockery.
We have reached an agreement of certain economic terms. The most important thing now is building a team to analyze the most important characteristics of port workers who are a fundamental part of the country's development.
While workers ask for the respect of the dignity of their work, the government has offered them some gift cards, a training course, and a loan, which would need to be paid back.
We have been on strike for over 30 days. This offer makes a mockery of workers.
Even if they are part of Chile's labor law, their employment at the ports remains informal. They have no job security, no paid vacation, nor any basic right that other workers enjoy. Therefore, other workers have joined them in their fight. This strike has made a mark in Chile. It's the first time in 18 years that Valparaíso port workers have brought the port to a halt.
We will continue to mobilize, join the Valparaíso strike.
Instead of listening to their demands, President Sebastián Piñera has intensified his efforts in trying to criminalize this movement, bypassing his role as a mediator, as a guarantor of workers' rights.
Just think of all the improvements we must fight for. The strike is not for money, it's for our dignity. And we will continue fighting for it. We're fighting for our families. We will only get stronger as more people are joining our cause.
It's likely that as the new year approaches, these ports will continue to be full of striking workers, resisting a neoliberal system and demanding respect for their rights.
In Brazil, on Wednesday, the president of the Supreme Court, Dias Toffoli, annulled a decision to release detainees convicted in the second instance. This means that former President Lula da Silva and other prisoners who have not yet exhausted their appeals processes will remain behind bars. Earlier, a Supreme Court judge ruled that all prisoners awaiting a judgment on their second appeal should be released. Our correspondent in Brazil, Danai Galetti, explains.
Brazil's Supreme Court president has struck down Wednesday's ruling that would have effectively freed former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva from prison. No doubt the news came as a surprise to many. We elicited the opinions of several magistrates on the issue. We also spoke with members of the Communist Party who had actually filed the appeal against the 2016 Supreme Court decision. Well, it was evident that the decision to knock down Wednesday's ruling was certainly not expected. In some quarters even, it's being viewed as a political response. On Wednesday, Justice Marco Aurelio Mayo had issued a ruling that suspended the Supreme Court decision from 2016 that actually allowed for convicts to be jailed after their sentence was upheld on first appeal. He had said that his conscience led him to that decision and that it was intended to benefit more than 169,000 people, not just the former president. After Wednesday's ruling, Lula's lawyers wasted little time filing documents they hoped would secure his release. The Workers' Party was also optimistic that Lula would enjoy this Christmas with his family as a free man. However, earlier on Thursday, the party's leader and his deputy confirmed the latest setback in the bid to secure Lula's freedom. They described the move as a blow to the Brazilian constitution. They both say they plan to hold a vigil outside the prison where Lula will spend Christmas. This shows once more the political persecution he is suffering, they say. Lawyers say this is not politically correct, even from the Brazilian justice system, to have a former president as a political prisoner. Meanwhile, Lula's supporters are still holding out hope as the Supreme Court president says the contentious case would be heard on April 10th next year.
We thank our correspondent for that report. The Workers' Party is strongly condemning the Chief Justice's suspension of the order that could free Lula. In a statement, the party has accused Justice Dias Toffoli of showing political bias. It adds that the move undermines confidence in the judiciary and also demonstrates a lack of respect for Brazil's constitution. The party vows to continue demonstrations in front of the High Court in protest of Lula's imprisonment. Last Wednesday, the group completed 40 weeks of protest action with a special tribute to Lula. President Michel Temer has been charged for alleged corruption and money laundering by the country's general prosecutor. An investigation against Temer revealed he had taken bribes from companies in exchange for the extension of 2 government port contracts. Among these was Rodrimar, a shipping and logistics company, which is believed to have paid bribes to Temer, amounting to almost $8 million. Temer can only be tried as president if Brazil's lower house of Congress votes to allow a trial to proceed, which is unlikely to happen before he leaves office on January 1st. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. A judge in Argentina has decided to include pre-trial detention in the corruption case against former President Cristina Fernández de Kirchner. The process against Fernández began in September when she was accused of receiving billions in bribes. As a senator, she enjoys immunity from arrest, and she has condemned these accusations as political persecution. The case also includes former planning minister Julio de Vido. And Argentina's indigenous activist Milagro Sala has rejected the public prosecutor's request for a 12-year prison term for her alleged crimes. Sala is currently facing a 4th trial for attempted murder. She is accused of trying to hire a hitman to kill a neighborhood leader. Sala has also faced a slew of corruption charges and could serve a total of 40 years in jail on all charges. However, social organizations claim the cases amount to political persecution. Argentina's Congress has turned into a project that seeks to teach public officials about gender issues. It is known as the Micaela Law, taking the name of a child who was murdered in a gender-based violence case last year.
During a week that was marked by various accusations of sexual abuse in work, family, and military situations, lawmakers gave in to social pressure and turned into law a proposal that asks that all state workers must take yearly classes about gender violence, no matter their rank.
This has been a week marked by countless testimonies of sexual abuse. We have heard from a lot of adults who were abused in their childhood, and I think this starts a paradigm shift in all the government's power, so we must keep up.
The so-called Micaela Law proposes the creation of a permanent national program of institutional training on gender and violence against women, with the goal of informing all public officials about how to recognize and deal with gender violence.
We don't need any more laws. We need to provide proper training to learn and understand a new language and how to properly treat such a sensible subject, compromising to take this work seriously.
In light of multiple complaints of sexual abuse, judges, prosecutors, and judicial workers met to discuss about practices and processes that guarantee justice with gender perspective. They also talked about several complaints of sexual abuse.
We have to be willing to receive training in gender perspectives. We have to start an investigation, because if you don't do the research, you may lose testimonies, and above all, you lose the victim's trust.
Feminist organizations have once again raised their voice to encourage women to report any abuse they have suffered. Also, they demand that convictions be given out as an example and ask for integral protection to prevent, sanction, and eradicate violence against women.
Moving on, Paraguay's government has called for talks with indigenous communities and farming organizations who say they are being displaced from their lands to make way for soy monoculture farming. The government called on these organizations to sit down and talk in order to find a solution to this issue. Authorities say they want to find ways to help the most vulnerable. Ongoing protests by the Tacuaray community in the department of Canindeyú are demanding the return of their lands and justice for murdered indigenous leader Isidro Barrios.
According to the resolution of the Rural Welfare Institute dating back in 1981, 1,000 hectares of this land belong to us, as Tacuaray. The National Institute of Rural Development and Lands has the file that says this: we want to clear up this situation and we want our lands back.
And now to Cuba. 50% of the proposals in the new draft constitution were approved during the popular consultation period. Homero Acosta, the secretary of the Cuba State Council, reported this Thursday that 4,809 proposals were accepted and will be reflected in the new constitution. However, Acosta said that the fact that the criteria has been accepted does not necessarily mean that its reflection in the document is going to be exact. If the Assembly supports the bill, the State Council will call a popular referendum for February that decide whether or not to approve the bill. Nicaraguan Foreign Minister Denise Moncada has announced a temporary stop to the operations of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights in the country. He condemned their attempts at interference and their lack of respect for the country's sovereignty. Two other groups backed by the Organization of American States are also temporarily ceasing operations.
This temporary suspension of the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, MECENI, and the interdisciplinary group of independent experts will last until the conditions are restored to respect our sovereignty and end interference in Nicaragua's internal matters.
We deeply regret the decision by the government. Surely in Washington they will regret receiving this information. We deeply regret not being able to meet the foreign minister and to go get feedback on our work, which would have helped both sides better understand each other's positions.
Mexico has agreed to a U.S. proposal to let third country migrants remain in or be returned to Mexico while their U.S. asylum claims proceed. The term refers to migrants who are applying for visa in countries outside of their homeland in order to go to another destination where they hope to secure asylum. In this case, the non-Mexican asylum seekers are being allowed to process their entry visas to the United States while in Mexico. The decision is seen as a historic step, as Mexico has, until now, refused to accept the return of migrants who are not Mexican. Meanwhile, Mexico's government says the move is a temporary humanitarian measure. Social organizations in Peru have presented their annual report on mining conflicts, which warns of the risk of contamination of Lima's water supply if a particular mining project is approved.
The Ariana mining project proposed by the Southern Bricks Company has received the government's approval to begin operations next year. It is located near the basin of the Rimac River, where mining isn't allowed according to institutions backed by the government itself.
State agencies themselves point out the project's proximity to the river. Exploiting of this mine could lead to serious environmental damage.
Civil society organizations have called on the press to report the impending danger of contaminating Lima's water resources. They pointed out a number of environmental issues that took place this year.
There have been critical situations around the project Tía María in the district of Cochacara, and also in the province of Huancabamba with the Rio Blanco project, where communities express their discontent and their opposition to the development of more mining projects. Even so, the companies behind them have said they want to continue their exploitation despite what the communities think.
While political authorities working with mining companies insist on doing these projects, citizens chose new governors in the last elections that share the interests of the population and care for the environment. Statistics in the report from the Mining Conflict Committee highlight this fact.
What we have witnessed is that in many places candidates oppose the development of mining, or at least ask for talks, but they are not necessarily willing to authorize the development of more mining projects.
Peru has some of the highest rates of environmental conflicts in Latin America. That's why civil society organizations ask that the state create better policies for land protection.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo corro.
To keep myself healthy, I study.
Για να διατηρηθώ υγιής, τρέφομαι σωστά.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo bailo.
Para mantenerme saludable, yo purifico mi espíritu a través del cuerpo. ¿Y tú?
Get your body. Tuesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Spain and Catalonia have agreed to seek an end to the political crisis involving Catalonia's bid for independence. Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez and Catalonia's regional leader Quim Torra made the commitment when they met on Thursday. Sánchez seeks to resolve the growing conflict over Catalonia's independence in a bid to secure support for his minority government in the region. In October 2017, Catalonia declared independence, prompting the Spanish government to deploy heavy police forces in Barcelona and arrest separatist leaders. Meanwhile, as the leaders met, demonstrators took to the streets of Barcelona. They were protesting against Friday's cabinet meeting to be held in Barcelona on the first anniversary of snap regional elections.
It is a useless meeting. The path of dialogue has been often tried, but it is not possible a dialogue with a state and a government that represents a state that imprisons civil leaders, that imprisons legitimately voted politicians.
Russian President Vladimir Putin held an annual news conference on Thursday to talk about the country's economic progress and future plans. Speaking on geopolitics, Putin said he largely agrees with U.S. President Donald Trump that the Islamic State has been defeated, but expressed doubts on whether the U.S. would fully withdraw from Syria. He took questions from journalists on subjects ranging from the country's economic growth to its nuclear program.
If we won't change the structure of the economy, we won't be able to achieve a GDP growth required for this breakthrough. The national projects are focused on it. Enormous resources will be invested. The government looks forward to changing structure and bringing forth innovation. Then growth will be increased, as other opportunities for development will appear.
Our correspondent Hans Loro was there and has the details.
The
annual press conference with President Vladimir Putin took place today with nearly 2,000 journalists in attendance. At this press conference, various topics were discussed regarding international relations, including the ongoing tension between Ukraine and Russia. On the other hand, Sergei Lavrov also discussed the armed provocation from the government of Kiev in the border with Crimea that undoubtedly harms the relationship of both countries. Another topic that was discussed was the U.S.-Russia relationship after Donald Trump's announcement of possibly leaving the INF, or the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty. Russian President Vladimir Putin urged maintenance of the principles of the treaty that was signed in 1987 in order to preserve international peace, principles that Russia has always fought for. Syria was another topic that was touched upon, as well as the creation of a committee which is backed by guarantor countries like Turkey and Iran. Regarding the economy, topics were discussed such as Russia's economic growth that this year alone has seen a 4% growth. Russia's technology development, and specifically the use of the cryptocurrency and blockchain, which can pose an alternative to help alleviate the effects of U.S. sanctions. Back to you at the studio.
That was Hansel Oro in Moscow. Thousands of commuters were left stranded when taxi drivers in South Korea walked off the job and held a mass rally to protest against a carpooling service. The demonstration comes just days after the death of a taxi driver who set himself on fire in protest against the planned launch of a carpooling service called Cocao. Taxi drivers say they fear that the service is going to destroy their jobs.
If the service is implemented, my income will shrink by half. After that, the taxi industry will totally collapse.
The Democratic Republic of Congo Electoral Commission has postponed the presidential elections scheduled for the 23rd of December by a week. This was revealed during a meeting held at the Commission's headquarters between the Commission and the candidates. The Commission chairperson said they need more time to organize the elections following a fire at the Commission's storage facility.
He has informed us that he will push the election for technical reasons. The CENI has said it is a technical unable to organize election on December 23rd. That is what CENI has told us, and we have told to the CENI, together with Martin Fayulu for Lamuca and the collective of presidential candidates I am part of, that we had written to them to ask for an ultimate consultative meeting in order to find a consensus on the voting machines, on the electoral roll, and other problems around the manner in which the CENI has organized this.
Meanwhile, opposition candidate Martin Fayulu has said he will not accept any postponement on the elections.
As far as I know, the president of the CENI said that come rain or shine, there will be elections on December 23rd, 2018. So I think we must expect these elections, and we cannot accept that Mr. Nanga will change his position today.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.
After the triumph of the revolution in Cuba, childhood has taken on an unparalleled social space. Documentaries Telesur presents